It was made plain enough by the dressing of the shops that here too it was Christmas time again, only it was evening and the streets were lighted up. The ghost stopped before a certain warehouse door and asked Scrooge if he knew it. Know it? I was apprenticed here. They went inside. An old man in a Welsh wig was sitting at such a high desk that if he had been 2 inches taller, he must have knocked his head against the ceiling. Why, it's old Fezziwig, bless his heart. It's Fezziwig alive again. Old Fezziwig laid down his pen and looked at the clock, which was pointed to the hour of 7. He rubbed his hands together, adjusted his capacious waistcoat, and called out, "Yo-ho, Ebenezer Dick!" Scrooge's former self, now grown a young man, came briskly in, accompanied by his fellow apprentice. Why, it's Dick Wilkins, to be sure. "Yo-ho, my boys! No more work tonight. Christmas Eve, Dick. Christmas, Ebenezer. Let's have the shutters up before a man can say Jack Robinson." You would not believe how those two fellows went at it. They charged into the street with the shutters, 1, 2, 3, had them up in their places, 4, 5, 6, barred them and pinned them, 7, 8, 9, and got back before you could have got to 12, panting like racehorses. Hilly hi ho! Old Fezziwig skipped down from the high desk with wonderful agility. "Clear away, my lads. Let's have lots of room here." The floor was swept and watered, the lamps were trimmed, and fuel was heaped upon the fire, and the warehouse was as warm and dry and snug and bright a ballroom as you would hope to find upon a winter's night. In came a fiddler with a music book and went up to the high desk and made an orchestra of it and tuned like 50 stomach aches. In came Mrs. Fezziwig, one vast, substantial smile. In came the 3 Miss Fezziwigs, beaming and lovable. In came the 6 young followers whose hearts they broke. In came all the young men and women employed in the business. In came the housemaid with her cousin, the baker. In came the cook with her brother's particular friend, the milkman. In came the boy from across the way, who was suspected of not having board enough by his master, trying to hide himself behind a girl from next door but one, who was proved to have had her ears pulled by her mistress. In they all came, one after another, some shyly, some boldly, some gracefully, some awkwardly, some pushing, some pulling. In they all came, anyhow and everyhow. And there were dances, and there were forfeits, and there were more dances, and there was cake, and there was negus, and there was a great piece of cold roast, and a great piece of cold boiled, and there were mince pies and plenty of beer. But the great effect of the evening came after the roast and boiled, when the fiddler struck up Sir Roger de Coverley. Old Fezziwig stood out to dance with Mrs. Fezziwig. Top couple, too, with a good stiff piece of work cut out for them, 3 or 4 and 20 pair of partners. But if it had been twice as many, 4 times, old Fezziwig would have been a match for them. And Mrs. Fezziwig, too. A positive light appeared to issue from his calves. They shone in every part of the dance like moons. When the clock struck 11, this domestic ball broke up. Mr. and Mrs. Fezziwig took their stations, one at either side of the door, and shaking hands with each and every person as he or she went out, wished him or her a Merry Christmas. When all had departed save the 2 young prentices, they did the same to them. A small matter to make these silly folk so full of gratitude. He has spent but a few pounds of your mortal money, 3 or 4 perhaps. It isn't that. It isn't that, Spirit. He had the power to render us happy or unhappy, to make our service light or burdensome, a pleasure or a toil. Why, the happiness he gave was quite as if it had cost a fortune. Well,